My wife looked me right in the eye and said, "It's just work. Just a quick overnight trip with my boss to meet some clients." And on the surface, it sounded fine business trip. Clients. Nothing unusual. But the way she said it, you know, the way her eyes darted just slightly before she looked at me again, that tiny hesitation in her voice, it made something in my gut twist. I mean, after 9 years of marriage, you start to pick up on those little tells. Truth is, I'm not a jealous guy. Never been the type to freak out if my wife works late or grabs lunch with a coworker. But this felt different. You ever had that quiet little alarm go off in your head? The one that says, "Hey, something here doesn't add up?" That's where I was. She packed light a single carry-on bag and tossed it in the trunk before giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. Not the usual hug, not the linger we used to have before a trip. Just a quick peck and, "See you in 2 days." I stood in the driveway and watched her drive off, my hands shoved in my pockets, feeling this pit in my stomach I couldn't explain. And I'm thinking, 2 days? For one client meeting? She works in marketing. Most of her meetings could be handled over Zoom. So why this one? Why now? That night, I tried to shake it off. I turned on the television, opened a beer, told myself I was overthinking. Her last text before bed was, "Landed safe." No emoji. No picture of her hotel room like she usually sends. I know it sounds small, but when you're used to someone's patterns, even little changes feel big. I scrolled her Instagram. Nothing. No stories. No posts. For someone who usually shares every coffee cup and airport gate selfie. The silence was loud. And then, I remembered something from 2 weeks ago. I'd come home early and heard her laughing on the phone, laughing in that soft, almost flirty way she used to laugh with me when we first met. When I walked in, she ended the call quick and told me it was just a client. I didn't press her. But that laugh, yeah, it stuck in my head. And now it was playing on repeat. Another thing, about a month ago, she asked me out of nowhere if I thought coworkers could be close friends. I said, sure, as long as there's trust. She smiled, said she was glad I thought so, and changed the subject. Back then, I didn't think much of it. Now, it felt like a breadcrumb I'd ignored. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I called my buddy Mark. He works in IT security and has helped me before when I thought our Wi-Fi was getting hacked. I asked him if there was a way to check flight info, just to confirm her schedule. He chuckled and said it wasn't easy. But if I had the flight number, and guess what, I had it. She'd left the email open on the kitchen counter the day before she left. Mark got back to me an hour later. "She's flying to Miami," he said. That matched what she told me. But then he added, "She's booked to return a day later than she told you." My heart sank. I asked him if he could check her hotel booking. 2 hours later, he emailed me a screenshot. The reservation wasn't under her name. It was under her boss's, Tia, with 2 guests listed. And right there, my mind started connecting all the dots I didn't want to see. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, my fingers tapping on the wood. Not gonna lie, I felt this wave of heat in my chest. Part anger, part, I don't even know. I thought about calling her right then, thought about texting, asking for an explanation. But here's the thing, you don't tip your hand too early. If she was lying, she'd just have time to cover her tracks. No, I needed to see it for myself. I needed proof, not just suspicion. So I opened my laptop, looked up flights to Miami, and started planning my own little business trip. And the whole time, one thought kept looping in my head: if she's telling the truth, I'll come back feeling stupid but relieved. But if she's not, well, that's a whole different story. So the next morning, I booked my own ticket, same airline, same city, just a few hours after hers. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends, not my family, Not even Mark. The fewer people who knew, the less chance it would get back to her. On the flight, I couldn't stop playing scenarios in my head. One part of me was hoping I'd land, find her actually in a meeting with clients, and feel like a paranoid idiot. Another part, the louder part, kept whispering, "You already know what you're going to find." I got to Miami, skipped the rental car, and grabbed a rideshare straight to the hotel Mark had found. As soon as we pulled up, I spotted it her boss's car. I'd seen it before at company events. Big flashy SUV, the kind that says, "I make more than you and I want everyone to know." My stomach dropped. Still, I told myself, could be a coincidence, could be something else. I walked into the lobby, trying to look casual, and went up to the front desk. I told the clerk I was meeting some friends for dinner, asked if they'd checked in yet. She smiled politely, typed for a second, and said, "Yes, about an hour ago." I asked if they'd left and she shook her head no. I thanked her, turned toward the restaurant, and there they were, my wife and her boss, sitting in a booth by the window. They weren't leaning across papers or laptops. No, they were leaning toward each other, laughing. Her hand on the table, his hand over hers, and not the kind of laugh you give someone you only see at work. I froze for a second, my jaw tightening. I was angry, really angry, but I wasn't about to storm over there. Not yet. I needed more than a scene in a restaurant. I needed proof that no one could talk their way out of. So I turned, walked out, and crossed the street to a little cafe with a clear view of the hotel entrance. I ordered coffee. I didn't even drink, and waited. About 2 hours later, they came out. She was holding onto his arm. He said something that made her throw her head back and laugh. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, tell me again how this is just work. They got into his car and drove off. I followed in another rideshare, telling the driver to keep some distance. They ended up at this trendy waterfront bar, one of those places with string lights and overpriced cocktails. I stayed outside, leaning against a wall, pretending to scroll my phone while I kept them in sight. I snapped a few photos clear enough to see their faces, the way she touched his arm when she laughed, the way he stood too close. Timestamps, location, everything. After about an hour, they left together, drove back to the hotel, and walked in through the side entrance. I didn't need to guess where they were going next. That was enough for me. I headed back to my own cheap motel near the airport, booked a flight home for the next morning, and saved all the photos to a private folder. Lying there that night, I kept asking myself if I should confront her as soon as I got home. Or wait. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wanted to give her the chance to tell me the truth. I wanted to see if she'd come clean on her own. So when I got back home the next day, I acted normal. She came in later that evening, suitcase in hand, big smile on her face. "Trip went great," she said. "Clients were thrilled." She kissed me, went to unpack, and I just nodded, like I was buying every word. Inside, though, I was just staring at her, waiting to see if she'd crack. 2 days passed. Nothing. No confession, no hint. Just the same old routine. And that's when I decided if she wouldn't tell me the truth, I was going to show her the truth instead. Saturday night came, and I told her I wanted us to have a nice dinner at home, just the two of us. No phones, no distractions. She smiled, like she thought I was being sweet. And I played along. I cooked her favorite pasta, opened a bottle of wine we'd been saving, set the table like it was some kind of date night. We sat down, talked about nothing for the first half hour, just small talk. Her work, the weather, the neighbor's dog barking again. And the whole time I'm thinking, you have no idea what's coming. Halfway through the meal, I set my fork down and said, "Hey, I want to show you something." She looked curious, maybe a little cautious, but nodded. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened a folder, and slid it across the table. On the screen, clear photos of her and her boss at the bar, her laughing with her hand on his arm, him leaning in close. Timestamps, location tags, everything. Her smile disappeared instantly. What is this?" she asked, her voice already shaky. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "You tell me." She stared at the phone, then back at me, then down again, like maybe the table would give her an escape. "It's not what it looks like," she started, but I cut her off. "Really?" "Because it looks exactly like what it looks like." She tried again, stumbling over her words. It was a work dinner." I laughed, but not in a funny way. "Work dinner? With your hand in his? Walking out together? Back to the hotel?" She froze, eyes wide, and I just stared at her. Stared and waited. I wanted her to fill the silence, to see if she'd lie one more time. Finally, she broke eye contact, looked down at her plate and whispered, "I'm sorry. It just happened." That's the thing about that phrase, it's not an explanation. It's an excuse, and I wasn't taking it. I stood up, walked over to the counter, and picked up an envelope I'd placed there earlier. I set it in front of her. She glanced at it, then at me. "What's this?" she asked quietly. "Divorce papers," I said. "Already signed on my end. All that's left is for you to sign yours." She blinked, like she couldn't process the words. And then her eyes filled with tears. She reached out across the table, but I stepped back. "No," I said. "You made your choice in Miami." I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair and headed for the door. She called my name once, but I didn't turn around. Not gonna lie, walking out of that house hurt more than I thought it would. This wasn't just losing a wife, it was losing the version of her I thought was real. But here's the thing. Staying would have hurt worse. I drove around for a while, ended up parked by the waterfront, just staring at the reflection of the city lights on the water. Part of me felt free, part of me felt crushed. Both parts knew there was no going back, and that was that. Or, at least, that's what I thought. Both parts knew there was no going back, and that was that. Or, at least, that's what I thought. Because a week later, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was one of her coworkers, and they said, "You need to know what happened after you left. Trust me. You're not going to believe what they told me next."